blended family.
We are a 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 blended family.
We're a blended family.
We are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
And we are a blended family.
Welcome to Blended Families class. This is week 2 of 12. Again, we are partnering with ChristianLivingRadio.com. We record these, we go live on Facebook, and we give them the audio. They put it out on their website, and it goes out over the internet radio. So we're very thankful for that. Our website is blendedfamiliesministry.org. All our resources are there. And if we happen to bless you in any way, there's the donation tab. You can always use that if you want to. Anyway, this week, week 2 of 12. What is a blended family anyway? Like Carol said earlier, before we really get started, there's something we hear frequently when we talk about doing blended family stuff. It's like people go, oh, we're not blended. You know, like it's a very bad thing. And, you know, obviously we forgive them because they just don't understand. But there is just about an infinite number of categories you could put somebody in that would make them blended. But anyway, we're going to go through the different types in general, and then we'll spend a lot more time in detail on the two main ones. Obviously, the biggest category is remarriage after divorce. And then there's remarriage after the loss of a spouse. Big difference. And then there's foster parenting. There's adoption. Different cultures, and then different nationalities. You can have different cultures in the same nation.
That's right.
Right?
Amen. Yeah.
One of Carol's exes was from Texas. She was from New Hampshire.
Totally different.
That's like two different countries.
It was.
You know, she's all about seafood, and he was, you know, biscuits and gravy.
Yep.
So, and black-eyed peas. So, you know, and then, you know, brown gravy on biscuits.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You know, gross, right? So, just because you're in the same country doesn't mean you have the same concept of normal.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously there are different countries. And I suppose people from different countries could probably have more similar cultures than, you know, like New England and Texas, you know.
That's right.
But it's still, there's differences. And basically when we talk about blended family, we're talking about people are different. And we'll get way into that in the deep stuff next week. But we're just touching on it a little bit. Different religions. Now the Bible says, do not be unequally yoked with a non-believer. Right? But, you know, you find people that, you know, there's Catholics and Protestants, there's Jewish and whatever, and Muslim now, and, you know, all kind of things that get together. I think someone I was talking to recently, there was a Catholic and a Muslim. Oh, it was somebody I was driving around a couple weeks ago. And needless to say, their marriage didn't work.
I wonder
why. Right. So he was confused. You know, I had a couple minutes to talk to him a little bit about Christianity, but when your father's a Muslim and your mom's a Catholic, you're going to be confused. I mean, they're so different. But that's one reason why the Bible tells us to not be unequally yoked, because those big differences are more than likely the negative is going to outweigh your positive.
That's right.
So, how's that go? Bad company corrupts good morals. Right?
It does.
The negative is often kind of a stronger influence than what little bit of good you might have in you, because we're just as bad as anybody. We just have God. But bottom line, and then there's this one. First, marriages, as one of our other teachers likes to say, is a collision of two families. Okay? So, and this is where a lot of people think, well, I've never been married before. This is my first marriage. We're not a blended family. And they're very adamant about that. But unless you're both orphans,
That's right.
you're blending two families with a marriage. That's what a marriage is. It's a blending of two families. And back in the old days, 1600s, that's what marriages were all about, was putting two families together. Especially with any royalty or any of that, it was all about the families that you were getting married to, and you weren't marrying for any other reason to get except to get the families together. So, even a first marriage is a blending of two families. Ultimately, because God is not a respecter of persons, God's family is a blended family. And Carol mentioned it before we got started, and I think one of the other lessons we'll spend more time on that, but one of the most famous blended families of all is Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Right? Joseph was a stepdad, not the real dad. So you're not my real dad. Anybody ever heard that? 1,000 times.
2001, I got you beat.
Okay. Well, and as a step parent, you need to be ready for that. And, kids are kids. They're brutally honest sometimes. They'll throw that right in your face when it's convenient for them, not you. Okay? So we'll get back to some of these other things on here after we do this. Okay. Remarriage after divorce. The most common reason for blended families. That's where we get the yours, mine, and ours. All right? But the one thing about this particular category is there's a whole lot more spiritual baggage that goes with it. Marriage, in particular, life in general, is spiritual warfare. When a person understands that they are dealing with spiritual warfare, now they can kind of get a handle on what's going on.
That's right.
If that's like some really bizarre concept to you, you're going to be a victim. So know that life is spiritual warfare. Marriage is very much spiritual warfare because it's what God has done. And because God did it, Satan hates it. So one of the biggest problems about the remarriage after divorce is because of the additional spiritual baggage that goes with it, primarily because two people have broken what is supposed to be a covenant using the law. Right? Jesus came along, fulfilled the law, so that we could live under grace. All right? So the whole point of marriage was it's a covenant till death do us part. There's grace in that. But when we take the law and dissolve a covenant, we take ourselves out from under grace and put ourselves back under the law. Because now you have the courts telling you got to pay, this is what you get for visitation, this is what you get for alimony, child support, all these kind of things. It's the law telling you what to do. Okay? So that's probably the biggest thing. That's why we have another class called Beyond Divorce, because you got to deal with this stuff. Hopefully we can stop one or two here and there, before it gets all the way there, because it just makes everything so much worse. But for the most part, the people that are in the class for Beyond Divorce are those that got thrown away. They're the ones that didn't want the divorce. The other person, that's what they wanted, they got it, they left. And you're sitting there. So there's a whole lot of things you're going to have to deal with. But when two people are getting remarried after one or both has been divorced, they really got a lot of stuff to deal with. And if you don't deal with it before you get married, you will deal with it sooner or later. Or just get divorced again. Right? That's why blended families have a much lower success rate. They fail more often, and they fail quicker each time. You know, say you're married 10 years the first time, and it doesn't work out. You try it again. You make it 6. It's too hard. I quit. Now you try it again. Now it's like 3 years. You quit again. You know.
It's never really getting to the main root problem, though, Larry. That's why.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why. You didn't deal with anything. You just ran away from it. Funny thing about that, it keeps following you.
Talk about that guy that got married 9
Yeah,
times.
well, I was 6, I thought. But yeah, I have the same guy. Who cares? After like 4 or 5, who cares, right?
But he went to counseling, though. Say that.
Well, yeah, he went. We heard this from some other friends of ours that are counselors.
At a different church.
Different church. And it was like, this guy was on his 6th wedding coming up. 6th marriage.
I think it was more than that. Okay.
At least 6. Okay? So he's like telling the counselors, you know, these women, they just don't get it. And so the counselors said, well, okay, this is your umpteenth marriage you're coming up on, right? What's the common denominator here? All these, each time it's a different woman, right? Yeah.
It's always
Each time it's always you in it. So what's the deal, right? Yeah, some people they just don't get it. You know, it's always that speck in your eye, and I got the log in mine, and you know that whole thing. But after, well, like I said, we have the Beyond Divorce class, we have the premarital for blended families. You need to go through those before you get remarried. If you're going to be a blended family, you need to go through those. But the biggest thing is people do not deal with root causes. And the Beyond Divorce class, what we talk about a lot is divorce in and of itself is strictly a legal transaction. It is not a sin. It's all the sin that happens up until that point that creates it, or creates the need for it, right? We talk about God, this is in Jeremiah chapter 3, verses 8 through 10. God divorces Israel because Israel was the adulteress. God could not have anything to do with the adulteress. Now, that was his bride, but he had to put her away with a certificate of divorce. The biggest caveat there is God stayed faithful. So when they finally had enough of themselves and repented, he was graceful enough to take them back. Okay? That doesn't always happen with us humans. But anyway, there's things like adultery, addictions, anger, abuse, and all that kind of stuff that create the sin that's going on in a relationship. And I don't think I've ever heard of any case where it's always been 100% the one and 0 the other. And hardly even 99 and 1. It's like maybe 75-25 in some cases, but it's usually 60-40. You know, it's pretty close to half and half a lot of times. Both parties are just as bad. But some cases, you know, you always hear the story about the wife that was married for 20 years to a drunk, and eventually he got saved. And she just stuck in there for 20, 30 years, praying all the time, being the light, And it's because of her grace that eventually he came along.
That's right.
But that's what we're supposed to do. But when there's adultery, that's the one biblical out. There's addictions, which, once we become a Christian, we're new creations. That addicted person is an old person who's dead and buried. Anger, for example, or abuse. Those are works of the flesh. That's somebody that's just not getting the fruit of the Spirit that they're supposed to have. So it's part of that work in progress. But you have to deal with the roots. If all you do is deal with the fruit of something, the fruit keeps coming back. If you want to get rid of this tree, you got to pull it out by the roots, right? So deal with the root causes. Otherwise, they just keep following you. You're going to have to keep dealing with them over and over, and you're going to be dealing with the fruit, like anger or abuse or whatever. Those are fruits of a bad root. There's something deep down inside. You were hurt somewhere along the line, and now you just keep passing that on. Hurt people. Right? Okay, so one of the first things you have to do to be able to deal with root causes is identify them. This is where it's a good thing to start writing some of this stuff down. Make a list. Because once you identify it, now you can confess it and confess it as a sin. God forgives it. When we confess it, it's gone. Just like that. Poof. We just have to realize it. Right? I know a lot of people that keep praying for God to take something away from them, for years. They never truly expect Him to take it. Right? They ask Him to take it, but they never let go. They just hear, and they take it back.
Oh, it's like the grudge. If you take it away, they have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, that's one of the root causes. We don't know what to do with something that we get rid of. I mean, what's going to take its place? My favorite things they did here in those human videos was the grudge. Grudge was basically like a dog. It was your pet. You took it everywhere you went. You fed it. You petted it. But what are you going to do when you get? It's like, what do you do when you get rid of a pet, or a pet dies or something? You go back and replace it with another one, or you take some time to think about it, and you deal with that way. But you have to deal with the roots, otherwise you're just dealing with the fruit. Next year it's back. You pick it again, it's back the next year. It just keeps coming back. Deal with the root causes, whatever they are. Confess them. Rebuild your vertical relationship at that point. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. This is like from here up is our Beyond Divorce class in 2 minutes. But it's a 10-week class. Okay? Whatever happened prior to the divorce, you're going to have to forgive it and them and forgive yourself. You got to forgive yourself. That's hard sometimes. When I made a major mistake, I wanted to get forgiveness as soon as I could. I didn't want to be that. And there's a big difference between thinking that what I did is what I am versus thinking, oh, I'm a new creation now. I don't have to be that. I can be something totally different. So it's a switch from what Satan is telling me that I am because of what I did versus what God is telling me I am because of what He did. Okay? Wow, that was good. Where'd that come from? Wow. Yeah, that just sort of came out. Okay, forgiveness is crucial.
Yep.
You have to do it. It's a command. Okay?
And me, Larry, I didn't for 35 years. And
Yeah.
It made me so sick, and my whole body broke down, and I thought for the first 23 years we were married that everything was fine in my little world because I didn't have anybody being mean to me or my kids. But I was still mad at some things that would bring up some of the old issues and feelings. And I didn't realize how I was taking it out on Larry. And Larry didn't deserve that. But I had to go through some major changes within me. And where we didn't do church for 23 years, I didn't know. I thought being a Catholic, that's all I got to do. I mean, I pray to God wherever I am, and didn't realize what truly being a Christian was until we had a mess in our marriage and we went and got Christian counseling. It changed my whole attitude. And you have to die to yourself, truly die to yourself before you can be reborn. And that's what, I mean, this is what saved me, as I told you last week, my Jesus classes. What would Jesus say and what would Jesus do? Because I never used to think that. He would say something or somebody would say something and get me mad, and it was, I get them back when I got something I can say better than what they said to me. That's wrong. That's not Christian at all. That's not who God wanted you to be. But it was all because I did not forgive. Truly did not forgive what my first husband had done to me, what my second husband had done even worse to me and my kids. So, I mean, I was defeated twice around and didn't even know it until we were both together brought before the Lord. And when we got Christian counseling, Larry said, I want to be baptized. He says, I've never been baptized. Well, I was baptized as a Catholic when I was a baby. And so I said, well, if you're going to be baptized, I'm going to be baptized with you. And the feeling that I had when that happened, the both of us going down under the water and coming back up and facing one another, changed my whole life. And that's when we counsel couples, we tell them, if you haven't gotten baptized together, you need to do that. You need to do that. The feel, I can't even explain to you the feeling that I felt from my head down to my toes, completely different, completely re-cleansed. But you have to truly forgive. And I know my son, who's 52 now, would say to me, Mom, how can you forgive him for what he did to us? How can you even say his name without gritting your teeth? Well, when you truly forgive, you can. I said, I not only forgive him, I pray for him.
Yeah, that's it.
I pray
That's
he
it.
will have forgiveness
That's
within
right.
his heart. And I know God will forgive him, but I pray he asks for forgiveness.
Yeah.
But anyway, the forgiveness is the key to anything. Austin.
You know, you said something, Carol, that you didn't even know it. When Christine and I got married, we thought we were just, oh my gosh, we found the most amazing person and everything. And our divorces were completely the other person's fault. We were clueless. We started taking stuff out on each other, and it was that we hadn't truly forgiven. And it took years. And there's still times I'll be like, hey, wait a second. You need to pray for your ex-spouse. We need to pray for him and bless him because you're taking it out on me. And it always comes out on it. And if you guys or anyone's engaged in here, really, really search your heart because you don't know it sometimes. It's a little bitty root of unforgiveness. But once you get married, it's like magic. It comes out big against your spouse. I can't explain it.
It does.
It's vital. Fast and pray and really search your heart.
The explanation lies in that the devil is out to lie, cheat, and steal and kill, and especially for marriage. And remarriage, as Larry said earlier, is far more susceptible to that than ever.
Right.
Yeah. It's amazing how fast that fruit grows, even from a small root. Yeah.
We just had another epiphany, like the girl that I was engaged to before me and Rachel got married. I just realized sitting here in class, I told that woman I literally wanted to kill her.
Yikes.
So I need to forgive her.
Yes, you do.
Because Rachel, I bark at her all the time now. And I told you guys we had a great week. We had a lot of opening, a lot of stuff that opened up to my heart and how much I was putting Rachel through everything. So now it's like literally,
And the thing is,
I've been putting her through it. I mean,
he sees it now, but I told him before that we should look at her, the relationship we have with her, not as a bad one, but as thank you for teaching me the things that you taught me to make myself a better person in a different relationship.
Absolutely.
Right.
But he couldn't see it when I said it. Like he didn't see it, somebody else had to see it because he was taking it was still taking it toward me about her. So yeah.
Oh,
So it has to happen sometimes.
That's why we need mentors.
Yep.
Karen.
And we have to realize when we talk about forgiveness, your feelings are not going to be in agreement with it.
That's for sure.
You have to forgive by faith and pray and ask the Lord to help your emotions line up with what the Lord's word says. But it's by faith we forgive and we pray and pray. I think you have it down there. In time, the Lord will heal. And so we have to realize that act of faith, that commandment, is a step of obedience. And through that, we can pray for that ex ourselves and then watch the Lord begin to heal those emotions.
Right. Good point. There's such a huge difference or gap, maybe I should say, between emotions and feelings and truth. Right? And like you said, we need to go with what the Word says, not what we feel.
That's right.
Because 9 times out of 10, our feelings are going to lie to us.
That's right.
Also, I want to say that sometimes, like going through these classes, it's not just an ex-spouse. Like with my husband, when he would talk and vent to me, I would have to tell him, wait, time out. Who are you talking about right now? Because I don't know which woman you're talking about. You're talking about your mom, your 3 sisters, or your ex, because they are all one person. It's almost like that woman was a magnet for him based on how he was raised by the sisters and the mother and all the abuse that went on as he was growing up as a child. So I would have to tell him, and every time I repeated that to him, he'd be like, oh my gosh, every time you say that to me, they're all the same person. So maybe if you're not forgiving the spouse, but maybe forgiving your mother, forgiving your father, forgiving your sisters, and the abuse you grew up that brought you to this position to where you were in a relationship that was that toxic that brought you there.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that comes out, especially in the Beyond Divorce class, is, identifying the things that you did wrong and accepting the responsibility for your part. And that's hard, because it feels so much better to blame somebody else for what happened, right? But, Julian?
Just thinking about the rules, when we not working in this and deal about this, it doesn't matter. It's like Carl said, it doesn't matter how many good people God bring to you for the new relationship. If we're not working in those unforgiveness and all those painfuls in your heart and pull out. For me, it's a good example when we try to pull out weeds in the ground and you just pull out the top and I pull out the roots.
Grows back.
All those things, it doesn't matter. You are a really good person. These things, they want to, like you say, they want to grow out again and they want to affect your relationship and your marriage.
Right.
That's true.
So, it's, forgiveness is the bottom line, right? And God forgives us as we forgive others. And then he says, if you do not forgive, you will not be forgiven.
Amen.
That's pretty serious.
Yeah.
And if you are not forgiven, where do you go?
To hell.
Do you want to take a chance? I don't. I'm sorry.
My thoughts on that, Larry, is that when you don't forgive, you're just holding on to that and you don't move on.
Right. You're stuck.
So
It's like if this isn't the best example, but if I'm hanging on to this, there's things on this table I wouldn't be able to reach.
Yeah.
I'm that close. But if I'm hanging on to this thing, I'm stuck. I can't get to that.
Yeah.
So you have to let go to be able to move ahead. Karen.
Can you kind of explain a little bit, clarify a little bit, the difference when you forgive? Does forgiveness always mean restoration or restoring of that relationship? Because sometimes, and thinking about myself, I would forgive and then I put myself back in an abusive situation because I thought that was what forgiveness was.
No.
So could you kind of give a clarification about
forgiveness does not require restoration.
No.
That's right.
Two different things.
That's good.
Forgiveness is forgiving someone, even yourself,
That's right.
for a sin. Forgiveness sets you free. It doesn't set them free. It sets you free, right? Restoration is part of God's will. He's all about reconciliation and restoration.
We hope you're enjoying today's Blended Families Ministry show. Please check out our resources on our website at blendedfamiliesministry.org. Also, if this program blesses you in some way, it would be a huge blessing to us if you would also consider a small donation or even become a monthly partner with us. No donation is too small.
But, like Peter, right? How many times do I need to forgive this guy? 7? Like, oh my God, 7? No, 70 times 7. But there's healthy boundaries that we need to set sometimes. You forgive people. The 5th commandment, honor your mother and father, and there would be more years, right? Well, you can honor people. Honoring is forgiving them. But you can do that from a distance, right? Just because you forgive someone does not mean you have to be their best friend again.
Amen.
If they can, you give them a few chances. If they continue to hurt you and hurt you and hurt you, then, there's discernment and wisdom that needs to kick in and says, I forgive you, but I don't need to be around you.
Right.
And you have that choice. So forgiveness does not mean, okay, I got to be your best friend again. It just doesn't. But it sets you free from all the baggage, the spiritual baggage. It sets you free from it. Now they have to deal with it themselves. They have to deal with it between them and God. You got to deal with you between you and God. You forgive them because God said you have to forgive them. But that's for you. Okay? So forgive them, receive it, and give it. Like I said, it's for you. If you do not forgive somebody, you're letting them live in your brain rent-free.
You're evicted. Getting evicted today. You got to go.
And then I'm going to bring it up in 10 minutes.
Well, then you didn't.
That's what I'm bringing up, the fact that sometimes we think we did, but maybe we just feel like, for myself, like really, actually, okay, this is how you forgive. You probably want to follow these steps. And one of those steps is probably don't bring it up again, like in 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
We have to look at the way God does it. Now, God, when He forgives, He is able to forget. So it's like it never happened. Okay? So that's kind of the way we need to think about it is, yeah, it happened, but not really. But we don't forget. Part of not forgetting is learning from the past. God is all about the future. So, Ray.
One thing we got to remember is we got a common enemy. He's going to throw them thoughts that try to trigger you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something we get tripped up on sometimes.
One of the things that's really been put on my heart the last several months now is just the fact that
something's going on. It's not.
Stopped.
Yeah.
Stop. Hang on.
I tried to press go live again, right?
It ended. Sorry.
It's over.
right face.
Yeah, I'm like,
face like, man, we're recording you.
I'm like, I was trying to do that.
Well, I guess it's going. I don't know what happened the other time. Okay, so what was
The common enemy.
common enemy?
So I heard it explained like this. So someone owes you $1,000, okay? And you're feeling all good one day. You're like, you know what? You write them a note, you sign it. You don't owe me anymore, and you give it to them. And then the next day you're going, dang, I could really use that $1,000. It's already done. And so, yes, the thoughts come back, but that's when it's a conscious choice. You say, no, it's a decision. It's a conscious decision. And you go, nope. And you just have to remember, no, I forgave them. And it's a done deal because I keep my word and it's done. It's just conscious.
Yeah.
By faith, if nothing else.
Thank you for sharing that, because now I'm thinking, although I'm not talking about $1,000, what is bothering me and what I forgave, I should write it down so I can look at it and go, oh, that's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because our thoughts are so easily.
They will come.
So that way I can say, oh, that's right. I wrote it down because I did it.
Your spouse will do something that reminds you of the other one.
Well, I didn't want to go there.
We all there. We all do it.
Yeah.
She's been going through
That's how that works, right? When you can.
We all do it.
For Carol especially, two bad marriages, guys cheated and all kind of bad stuff. She thought she forgave him, but anytime she would talk about them, it was like it just happened. And when you can get to a place where you can actually talk about something that happened to you in the past, as you're looking at it from an educational perspective, here's what I learned from what happened, not here's what happened. Here's what I learned from what happened.
That's good.
It's a big difference. People don't really want to hear what happened to you. They want to learn. They want to hear what you learned from what happened. And God is more concerned about what you learned than what happened. The whole point of being a new creation is nothing's happened to you before.
That's right.
A new creation has no past. But the devil knows what it is, and you know what it is because we can't forget. So the devil keeps throwing our past in our face. God has a future and a hope. All right, Karen?
It's kind of like the statement we say, God takes our mess and makes a message.
Right.
So God takes what we have gone through, and we look at it no longer as a victim, but as a victor.
Right.
We have become victorious over that event, that offense, that whatever, that we can give God the glory for it.
Yeah, that's the point. God gets the glory for what he gets us through. Right? That whole point about hanging onto the tray here, trying to get to something on the table, it's like Satan keeps telling me, you can't get there from here. God says, I got that over there for you. Just let go of the past. Then you can get there.
Amen.
So the past is what it is. It's historical. For some, it's hysterical. But mostly it's historical. It's something to learn from. We make mistakes. Supposedly, we learn from our mistakes. If we don't, we just keep making them. Okay? So, bottom line, God allows do-overs. He forgives us. And then we can move on. Okay, a few more minutes here to go over the next one here. Remarriage after the loss of a spouse. Like I said, life and marriage is spiritual warfare. You're going to have it. But remarriage after the loss of a spouse is much different than remarriage after divorce, primarily because the covenant was fulfilled. Till death do us part. You did it. You made it. You survived, right? But because of that, now you're free to enter into a new covenant. So there's a whole lot less spiritual baggage, spiritual warfare when one of the spouses has passed on. You still need to take the time to grieve the loss and heal from things. There's a lot of similarities, but really there are different issues, right? Less spiritual baggage, but to me, when you remarry after the loss of a spouse, I like to use a new pair of shoes, right? A lot of times you get a new pair of shoes and you get blisters. You got to break them in, right? And sometimes in that breaking in process, it leaves blisters on your feet. But after they're broken in, man, there's hardly anything better than a good old pair of shoes. You know, they just fit. They're comfortable. You can wear them all day long, no problem. But that first week or so, maybe, or first couple days, 3 years. That can be kind of rough. Okay, so what happens? Let's just say you're the one left behind. Your spouse passed on, and you've taken some time to heal and grieve and get over that. Now you're kind of ready to move on, but now you meet somebody. Now the one thing about time and healing and everything, we have a tendency to only remember the good stuff. So now you're with someone new, that being the key word, new, different, right? But if all you do is remember the good stuff from before and none of the bad stuff, you're always going to be comparing this new person to the old person, which doesn't help them at all. They're going to feel bad because they're not as good or whatever. There are those times when, the spouse passes on and it's good riddance, right? But mostly it's like, man, I just miss them so bad, But the differences here is it's very easy to compare the new one to the old one. And that's not a good thing to a good place to be. You got to remember this is somebody different. And we'll talk a lot about that next week, like I said. This is a totally different person. You can't assume they're going to be like the other one. You can't treat them like they are the other one. This is a whole different person. You got to take the time to get to know this person, know what they're made of, and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that is a big deal, and Carol and I both got involved in this one, we were adult children when our parents remarried, our mothers remarried. And when you're like 30, 40, 50 something, you really have no interest in meeting a bunch of other kids, right, from the other parent. Why? So you can't, if you're the one getting married and you have some 20, 30, 40 somethings, which is happening a whole lot more nowadays, 60, 70-year-olds are getting married again, right? So they have older kids. But you really shouldn't have a huge expectations that they're all going to be the Brady Bunch. I mean, they got their own life. They probably got their own kids, right? So it's kind of on you to figure out how to deal with your kids, between the two of you, Don't expect everybody to come over for Thanksgiving. Maybe it's time for you to go to their houses. So it's one of those things. Mostly in here we deal with the after divorce stuff. Sometimes we deal with the loss of a spouse stuff. It's a different set of problems, issues, challenges. It's generally not as bad, but for my mom in particular, when she remarried someone who would only even consider marrying a widow. He wouldn't have anything to do with anybody that had been divorced. But when they came to visit us, there were pictures taken, us, kids. A few weeks later, we get a set of pictures back with the kids and everything. He says, well, they're not really your kids, so we don't need those.
Wow.
So that's part of the deal. You just have to try not to be offended, basically. They don't get it. You forgive them, just like Jesus on the cross. Okay, so the other thing that we got here is next week we're going to be talking about Susanna. We're going to be talking about celebrating our differences in detail, the way God created us and everything. And part of the joy of being married is taking the time to discover each other's gifts. What are you good at? What am I good at? Yep. What has God gifted you with? Versus overlooking each other's faults. A lot of times we get this backwards. We can care less what you're good at. We just want to tell you what you're bad at. Because it makes us feel better about us. So, discover each other's gifts while overlooking each other's faults. Anything else? Yeah. So, next week is celebrate your differences. As I like to say, who's normal is normal. So we'll get into all that good stuff next week. It's one of my favorites. Any other comments, questions? Anybody?
I would like to say...
Bueller? No.
It's very difficult, for myself, I can only talk about myself, coming into a situation where he has his ex, and then the stepchild comes in, and, trying to navigate through all that, and then with our actual 2 children that we've had, and then all the problems. And it's you were saying something earlier about, forgive or let it go, but his ex-wife, even though her body is not in our home, she's in our home. Her child looks a duplicate of her, and all the problems that she causes every single week. Every week, there's a problem with her. In our family, it causes that grief. And I tell my husband constantly, I'm from Texas. I was raised by strong men and strong women, so I have a lot of respect for myself. If you can't meet this level, I'm not going to keep lifting you up. I feel like I'm holding the burden of the family household and my husband up because of the way he was raised was so rough. If he was a child and I saw him as a child right now, I'd want to adopt him. You know what I mean? I'd want to fix it. But I can't fix her and him and then love and secure, make my 8-year-old stepson feel secure and safe. It's very difficult, and I just don't know about the
It's a challenge
part, because there's nothing to forgive. I didn't create him. I wasn't in the relationship.
No, but you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing to forgive exactly. But we're transformed by the renewing of our mind, right? So it's not so much what happened as how you look at it and how you process it and how you think about it. You can get all negative about all this stuff, or you can kind of step back a little bit, look at it from a different perspective, back away from it a little bit so it's not as big, right? Not right in your face.
Right.
And focus more on how you're perceiving everything and how you're processing it and how you're thinking about it. And, we're supposed to love our enemies and pray for them. So, I like to look at it as if I'm praying for my enemies, I'm putting a bucket of hot coals on their head. It's one way to get revenge in a biblical way, but that's God doing it, right? He's the one that you're praying, trying to bless them, and God's coming along and putting a bucket of hot coals on their head. So He's the one that's getting the revenge on your behalf. But if all you see is the problem, there's a problem. So, as the wife, it's your job to edify and build up, because you'll end up with what you build.
Right.
So
I'm exhausted though. It's exhausting.
Well, take some time off.
Yeah.
Just hey, that's not my problem.
I feel kind of naive about it, not very intelligent on my part. So I look at this situation between her and him, and I think, what's the big deal? I don't understand. Why can't you just, and I'll tell him, why can't you just call her? What's the big deal? Just squash it. So what? Okay, so what? So what?
There's that Serenity Prayer, right? let me know the difference between what I can do something about and what I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
What can you really do about all that? Not a whole lot.
Right. Just control my own household, but it's difficult when she's in there controlling it as well.
Rebuke it. Just rebuke it. You know, it's a weapon formed by the enemy, and you need to rebuke that. Not him or the kids or her. Just the enemy, the real enemy, is trying to mess with you. So this is part of that spiritual warfare stuff. And he is not the enemy, the devil is. She is not. She's a tool, right? And it's the devil. But you have to figure out what the tools are. And it helps put things in perspective when you realize who the real enemy is, because when you know the enemy, then you can fight the enemy. If you're not real sure, then everything looks like the enemy. So.
Thank you very much, Doctors Larry and Carol Snap. Blended Families Ministry comes to you weekly right here on ChristianLivingRadio.com with me, Pastor G. So tune in each and every week right here to ChristianLivingRadio.com. This is Pastor G. May God's best be yours.